Hello, welcome to Learning to Drum. I'm your host, Adam Tevlin. We are in week 51, episode 48. One more episode to go until the end of the season, and what we're going to do today is study number 24. It's a new concept, which is called the tie. And again, like I said last week, yes, we did go over some what is a tie, etc. This is our chance to actually really learn that. But before we do that, I told you, and I gave you a heads up, we are going to test on the triplet drag exercise. So we're going to start it at 90 and then bump it up to 100 and then 110, okay? Not a big deal. Hopefully folks been working on this, incorporating that double beat, drag exercise, those things, into this, the things that you've built on to get us to this point here today. All right, here we go at 90. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. There it is at 90. How did that go for you? Hopefully not too bad. We've done this before, and now up to 100. We've also done that before together. Okay. Yeah. Not too bad. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. Here we go. Cool. All right. Now for the test tempo. Dun, dun, dun. Last test of the season at 110. Let's see if we can do it. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. Here we go. There it is. All right. So how did you do on that? Well, hopefully you did well, and if not, that's okay. And hopefully you're starting to really kind of improvise with these things. Remember, improvise, it's making it up as you go along so you can make up whatever you want, etc., right? No big deal. All right. So now we can go ahead and turn to page 52. That's the last page of the book. Let's see here. Yep, that's the last page. And so maybe you're wondering, well, what are we going to do, Adam, next week if we don't have any more music to read, no tests to do, and no rudiments to learn? Well, remains to be seen, but we will have a next week's episode, week 52. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into study number 24 with a concept called the tie. And what the tie is, of course, is that curved line in between two notes, okay, of the same pitch. If we're dealing with the flute, remember the flute example, or the violin or anything like that, well, we're not having any pitch here. So that really doesn't kind of factor into what we're doing here. But what it does mean is that you are not supposed to play the note that it's tied to. As a matter of fact, it sustains for that duration, okay? So all you're doing with the tie is elongating the note, okay? So if I had 2 quarter notes tied together, that's because I wanted that pitch to be held for 2 beats, okay? If you have that pitch starting on beat 4 and 4/4 time, obviously I couldn't write a half note, so there's that tie use, right, to the next beat of downbeat of 1 to that next measure. And that's a good example of why I would tie a note of the same pitch instead of just writing a half note. Also, the ties are used in our stroke rolls in the rudiments, and you've seen the 5-stroke roll written like that with 2 eighth notes tied together, 2 tremolo marks, and an accent on that last note. Getting back to sustain, we had that multiple bounce roll, concert roll, press roll, buzz roll, whatever you want to call it. Again, we're talking about sustain. Well, if it was an open roll, we can kind of consider that as a sustain as well. So when you're starting to learn more of these stroke rolls in the next season, you're going to see that that sustain is held for that amount of time. And that's the most common way of writing stroke rolls or rolls in general, is to have that tie there or that sustain happen until where that composer wants you to stop at. In the last measure of every exercise here, we have the equivalent note value in place instead of using the tie, so you can see how that translates, and you notice that the equal sign is there, just letting you know it is the same audibly as far as sound. Without further ado, let's go ahead and do number 1. Since we're at such an easy note value, I'm going to turn my metronome up to 120 beats per minute. Okay, no big deal, right? So we're not going to play in beat 3, right? Okay, so we're going to play in 1, and that's pretty much it because we're resting on 4, okay? And you'll see that last measure, that half note tied to a quarter note is replaced by a dotted half note, and yes, they're of equal value. Okay, so here we go. Number 1, 2, 1, 2, easy. 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Repeat, right? Very simple, huh? And I played all those on my right hand. You can do right, left. It's up to you. Again, the whole purpose of this is just so you can understand what the tie means. Okay, now on to number 2, where we have 2 half notes tied together. That last measure, we have that equivalent value there, that whole note, right? So let's try number 2, still at 120. 1, 2, here we go. Repeat. 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. Now, yes, if I were a flute, both of those exercises would sound different, and I'm going to try to do my best as the flute sound right there on number 1. So you hear me sustain that for 3 beats and resting on 4. Here I go. Doo, doo. Okay, I'll spare you. But in number 2, there's a difference in sound, obviously, because we're holding for all those 4 beats, so it'd sound like this. Do, do, do. Okay, you get the idea. And the reason why I wanted to do that for you is so you can understand that, yes, if you had a sustained instrument, such as, let's say, a suspended cymbal, okay, and what that means, suspended, it's suspended on something, right? It's suspended on this stand. Or if you had, let's say, you know, the timpani, we talked about that at the very beginning of the season with those different types of sticks, right? So, doom, doom, doom. So, yes, you can sustain a timpani note for that long and dampening it and cutting it off when you need to. So, again, I just want you to understand, you know, the concept of the tie. You know, how would it translate into an instrument that has a sustain, okay? So, number 3, we're downbeat of 1, resting on 2, and we're sustaining on beats 3 and 4. Notice how we have the equivalent value there in that last measure of a quarter note, quarter rest, and then a half note. The half note replaces those 2 tied quarter notes. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll slow it down to 100. All right, here we go for number 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. 3, 4. Very good. Okay, and now number 4, we're going to be playing the 1 and tied to the beat 2 we're not going to play. We're not going to also play in beat 3, but beats 4 and 1 we will. All right, here we go for number 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, very good. Okay, number 5, we're going to slow it down to 100 because now we're getting a little bit more complex rhythms, adding the 8th note. Here's a little trick here, number 5. We are... It's going to be, when I first found this stuff out about ties and what it sounds like and how some rhythms sound the same as others if you're playing it just on the practice pad, well, here's one of those instances. And we're playing on beat 2, but we're tied. So I could replace that with a quarter note, right? And that's what we see here in the last measure of number 5. So let's try that at 100 beats per minute, slowing it down a little bit. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Repeat. 1, 2. Easy enough, right? Okay, again, I just want you to see what these ties would look like and then also how they would sound. All right, number 6, we're tied on the and of 1 to the downbeat of 2. This is where it gets a little tricky, okay? So I'm going to dial up my eighth notes and we'll slow it down to 90 just to take a little bit of the edge off. And how we're going to do it, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, if you see that last measure there of number 6, you can see the equivalent value there. Okay, so don't let all those eighth notes get you confused or whatever. Just kind of take a step back and say, okay, what am I not playing on? Okay, what is that tie leading to? What note is it tied to? Okay, I'm not playing on the downbeat of 2. I'm not playing on the downbeat of 4. Okay, so here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and, okay, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and here we go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good job. Okay. Getting a little bit more complex, and yes, I've seen this before to where 16th notes are tied together. So where are we playing on? Well, let's take a look at that second measure there. We're now in sets of 2 measures, obviously to save space, and we can see that the rhythm is 1E, a 2, and a 3, and 4E, and a. So don't let those ties get you confused. Remember, what are you playing on? What are you not playing on? Those are the questions you want to ask, okay? So let's go ahead and try those 2 measures, and we'll repeat those 2 measures. And I'm going to dial up my 16th notes, and we're going to slow it down to 80. Again, just to kind of take the heat off a little bit. 1E, a 2, and a 3, and 4E, and a. Not too big deal, okay? Use the natural sticking if you want. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, and a 2, and a ready, and a play, and. Again. No big deal. All right. So the last one in number 8, we have 1 and a 2 and 3E and 4E, a 1 and a 2 and 3E and 4E. Same thing as number 7, as you want to make sure you're figuring out where you're playing at, where you're not playing at. So let's try that together. This is the last exercise that we're doing together. Okay? All right, here we go. 1, a 2, a 1E and a 2 and a ready and a go. And 1 and a 2 and 3E and 4E. A 1 and a 2 and 3E and 4E. A 1 and a 2 and 3E and 4E. A 1 and a 2 and 3E and 4E. That is it for study number 24. Hopefully you have an understanding of what a tie means. Here we are, one more episode to go in this season. That's next week. To be determined on what we're going to be doing. Thanks so much for joining us on this 51-week journey of drums. And hopefully you're having fun with it, and hopefully that's something that you can remind yourself every so often, that maybe you might get down on yourself because you're not at a certain speed or whatever. And that's not what it's about, you know. It's really about your own journey. Thanks again for joining us on this week's episode of Learning to Drum. I'm your host, Adam Tevlin, and always remember to keep swinging those sticks.